filling your glasses to a sophisticated level.
That's a little bit more
Mademoiselle.
That is a little bit more than a 6-ounce pour.
Mademoiselle, do I look like I am interested in 6 ounces of anything? I'm Irish.
We went from French to Irish.
I'm Irish. I need more than just 6 ounces of bloody wine, alright?
Welcome to This Is Lit, a podcast where we drink and talk about our favorite books. I'm Elizabeth. And I'm Casey. And we're your hosts, so everybody raise a glass and let's get started.
Liz, tell the folks what we're drinking today.
Portada.
Portada.
Portada. Portada. It is Portada wine from Portugal.
We've both drank the Portada
Yes.
before, and today we're actually sharing a bottle instead of each drinking our own thing.
It is
because we're reading Dracula. And with Dracula, you gotta drink wine that is the color of blood, because otherwise you're not doing it right.
Exactly. I need my bright red lipstick.
Bitches, it's Halloween!
Halloween!
Happy Halloween!
My makeup is done to look like a reluctantly rescued evil queen.
My makeup is not done because we are in my house and I don't wanna.
I went and got my makeup done today as a test run.
I am wearing a blood red bra. You want to see my bra?
Sure. Oh,
So cute.
that's sexy.
Isn't it cute?
I like that. That's
Yes.
adorable.
So I
It
am
lifts?
technically lift,
Yeah.
lift and push.
Lift and push.
Lift and push. It's
Lift
a wonder
and push.
bra.
Ooh.
So anyway,
My bra is purple.
nice. Purple's good. So anyway, we're reading Dracula for this lovely
Dracula.
Halloween, which may or may not be dark and stormy.
By Bram Stoker.
I will tell you.
Bram Stoker.
Bram Stoker's Dracula, the
Mwahaha.
quintessential vampire novel.
Yes. Most definitely.
So it's kind of reading Dracula in general is kind of a fun thing because you like
Yes.
think about
Because
it.
you know,
but whenever
this was first published in 1897.
so the thing that's fun about Dracula is like there's shit ton of movie adaptations and there's all this different.
So much has come from this.
But
novel.
like when you're reading it regularly, like you kind of get a sense of that. But when you read it specifically to like analyze it in like a quote unquote book club scenario, which is basically what this podcast is just drunk book club podcast. Just doesn't sound as good as This Is Lit.
Which 90% of book clubs are drunk book clubs.
I've never been to a real book club. So that's a lie. I went to the ones in like middle school, but you weren't allowed to be drunk at those.
But that doesn't mean you weren't.
Something to do with being 14 or 15. They didn't want you
But
to be
that doesn't
drinking.
mean you weren't.
I have no comment on the matter.
Okay.
Anyway, so
Oh shit, there's a face in his cape. I never noticed that before. See? The little face in his cape.
what the fuck?
I have a wonderful little edition that my husband got me for my birthday because I'm home free. He got me a really nice hardback edition of
It's
Dracula.
the Macmillan Collector's Edition.
Yes, the Macmillan Collector's Edition. It's this little itty bitty book with gold edges.
Very cute.
And there is a bloody face in the red lining of Dracula's cape on the cover of the book.
Yes. So Dracula
Yes.
is not the first vampire novel.
No, it's
However,
not. It is the quintessential.
it is the
vampire
quintessential vampire novel. It's the one that kind of brought about the whole gothic vampire craze. To begin
Yes.
with. That's like what really triggered it. Like a novel that came before it was Carmilla,
novel. Yes, Carmilla.
which is not a full novel. What is it?
Novella.
Novella. There we go. I was wanting to say novelette for some reason. I don't know. It's a novella about lesbian vampires. It's great. Check it out sometime. But Carmilla never quite made the... Yeah, it's about lesbian vampires. Haven't you ever read it?
Oh, I know.
Why are you looking at me like that?
Because I'm thinking of, like, maybe that's what we should read next Halloween is lesbian vampires.
I'm always down for lesbian vampires.
It is the night for the dead to come back to the earth, so why not?
So, Dracula, though...
Wahahaha.
How many adaptations has this shit had?
Oh, good lord.
I wonder.
How-
I'm gonna Wikipedia Dracula.
A million of them. He's been in Buffy. He's been in Blade. He's been in the Van Helsing movie that Stephen Sommers did. There's been 1,000,002 adaptations of the actual novel. There's been 2 musicals based off of the novel.
Right.
One of which was shut down because Francis Ford Coppola got angry that they basically copied his plot. Which, there's the Francis Ford Coppola version, which has way too much sex in it than is actually in the novel. novel. Too much writhing around naked on the bed. And that is the famous one with Gary Oldman as...
I mean, don't forget the very first one that everyone knows of with, like...
Bela Lugosi.
Bela Lugosi.
Yes.
He was not only...
buried in one of his Dracula caves.
Well, you know he was Dracula in the movie, but you know before that he was Dracula in a stage play.
Oh, I didn't know he was in the stage play.
Yeah, he was in the title role when it premiered in New York.
There's a billion stage plays.
And then of course Christopher Lee was Dracula in 1958.
They didn't have a really sexy Dracula until 1970, and that was where the whole vampires were sexy thing came from.
Wasn't that
Who was that? But he was hot.
Cushing, right?
Yeah. He was
Peter
hot at the
Peter
time.
Cushing.
Yes, Peter Cushing.
No, he was Van Helsing in the Christopher Lee one.
Yeah, he was. Yeah.
Christopher Lee was the Dracula in the 1970s one too. He was first Dracula in 1958, and then Christopher Lee was Dracula again in 1970. But you know the Dracula.
Oh, and then there's Dracula Dead and Loving It.
I love the Bram Stoker, or not the Bram Stoker.
Francis Ford Coppola.
Gary Oldman is Dracula.
I know. God bless Gary Oldman.
Okay, here it says, as of 2009, so that was 11 years ago.
Gary Oldman listened to our podcast.
That wasn't 11 years ago, that was 9 years ago. I can do math. Gary Oldman listened to our podcast. As of 2009, so almost a decade ago, an estimated... Do you want to guess?
I'm going to guess at least 500. Are we doing movies or, like, stage
Films.
plays? Films. Okay. 300?
A little bit lower.
259.
217.
217.
217 films feature
That's
Dracula in
still
a major role.
Lot.
That is the second...
That's a lot.
The second most adapted character to film.
Who's the most?
Guess.
Santa Claus?
No. Think about it. Use your deductive reasoning.
Sherlock Holmes?
Uh-huh.
Ah!
223 Sherlock Holmes films.
What episode was that? Hashtag whatever episode that was.
That was a while ago. So anyway, Dracula
that was many bubbles ago.
is massively popular, has been around for, and actually the stupid accent I was doing at the beginning that I will probably leave in here because I hate myself, was an Irish accent. Bram Stoker was Irish.
He was. Oh my gosh, I have a, when Allie studied abroad, hello Allie, I miss you and I love you, who has been kind of my bad influence until I met everybody else in my life.
Until she met proper bad influences like me.
Yes, until I met proper bad influences.
Like you might actually go to jail with me bad influences.
Okay, Allie's bad influence was I'm going to sneak out past curfew and go hang out at
Casey's
my friend's
bad
house.
influences, do you want to try and get arrested tonight?
Which I never did.
all sorts, you know?
I never did sneak out. I was a very, very boring child. Boring. But she studied abroad in Belfast, and so I met her in Dublin and Belfast for my spring break, and so I had not seen an English bookstore in many a moon, so I got there with a little crazy.
In Italy?
Yeah, I was in Italy at the same time, so I had not seen a bookstore with books in English in a very long time, so I went there and I went a little crazy. Mm-hmm. But I bought this giant book of Irish ghost stories, and there's 3 of them in there by Bram Stoker, and one of them is about this ghost demon monkey that is haunting a guy.
Sure.
Terrifying.
Dope, okay. Bram Stoker, Irish.
Yes.
But the book does not take any place in Ireland.
Mm-mm.
It's all in Transylvania and England.
The first main character that appears is Jonathan Harker.
Yes.
Who, this book is, it says in the foreword that these papers have been placed in sequence, will be made clear in the reading of them. All needless matters have been eliminated so that a history almost at variance with the possibilities of latter-day belief may stand forth as simple fact. And it goes on to say, these are from diaries and papers of individuals, and they've been placed in order.
Which was another, like, really popular trend in Victorian novels, was for you to basically pretend that, I mean,
it was
obviously there's a certain, like, suspension of disbelief when you read a nonfiction, or when you read a fiction book, in general.
Yes.
But Victorian novels specifically took extra pains to make it seem more like it was real.
Yes.
You see this in Dracula, you see it in Jekyll and Hyde, you see it in the Agatha Christie novel we read last month, And Then There Were None.
Yes.
where the authors are like, so these are stories taken from the accounts of witnesses and survivors, and,
Yes.
and this is what happened. It's a very common trend to make the fiction seem a little less fictional and therefore scarier.
Yeah, and
It's
it
very
also,
common in Gothic literature.
It also helps give them the characters in the novel a little bit more depth.
Mm-hmm.
Because in Victorian society, you really weren't supposed to show what you felt a lot.
Right.
It was very repressed, but this was a helpful way to give characters depth.
Same thing.
It is Halloween.
I'm gonna put some really obnoxious Halloween sound effects behind
with some
this one.
lightning.
Oh yeah, the wind blowing through the trees.
Dun, 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 dun,
Spooky,
dun.
scary skeletons. Sorry.
And then that gif of that one guy with the pumpkin head. Just
Yeah, the CW Pumpkin Man.
Okay. Yeah, so this starts with Jonathan Harker, and he is on his way to Castle Dracula.
Because he's a fucking idiot.
Well, he is a solicitor, which meant realtor.
Yeah, well, but that
back in
being
the day.
okay. So, obviously, this took place in the 1800s or whatever.
1897 was when it was published.
Right, but they don't specify the year that it took place, do they?
The end of the book says in 7 years after the effect. So this whole course of
In the
Dracula
late
probably
1800s.
started. Well, all these journal entries have dates.
Yes.
It starts May 3rd, so one may be able to infer with the date it's published in the epilogue that it
If you're
happened
assuming
in
that it's not something that
1890.
happened immediately, yeah. So it's like in the late 1890s. So anyway, my point there was totally a tangent. If in the year of our Lord 2018 you were a fucking realtor and somebody wanted to sell a fucking scary castle in the middle of nowhere and they would only talk to you,
Or had a shit ton of money and wanted to buy a fucking scary castle in London and they were foreign.
would you fly out to their scary current existing castle and be like, yo, what up? I'm here to sell you a castle in a new country.
Yeah,
I
because
wouldn't.
realtors get 10%.
I don't
So
care.
fuck yeah.
I don't care how
That's
many
a year's
I
salary.
don't care.
A year's salary.
I don't care how many percent you get. I'm not selling.
You can't know he's creepy if you haven't met them.
He's kind of creepy in the letters, though. Like, there's letters between
My
Jonathan.
friend, welcome to the Carpathians.
Welcome to the Carpathians. Yeah, no. He's
We
creepy.
apologize to everyone who's from Romania.
So
You're
anyway,
probably also tired of hearing about this.
so I would not go to a creepy castle in the middle of nowhere to sell a man an even creepier castle in the middle of London. It wouldn't happen. I wouldn't do it.
See, if I knew it was a creepy castle I'd be going to, no heckin' way. If I didn't know it was a creepy castle I was going to, I would probably go because it's going to be at least 2 to 3 years salary from here.
Jonathan had some inkling that it was a weird situation he was
He
walking
did.
into.
He did have some odd inkling.
The letters were strange.
But he chalked it up to him being a foreigner,
And went to Transylvania.
which everybody keeps telling him, don't go.
Which that's the
And-
other thing, is like if a bunch of people are like,
Yeah, if
don't
I
go.
got there,
If you're like in a town and you're like, hey, how do I get to the Castle Transylvania? And everyone in the town's like, don't go up there, you crazy
the devil
bitch.
lives there.
The devil lives there.
I would be
I'd
like, okay, cool.
good,
I'm
duly
gonna sit
noted.
here.
Gonna go home.
Bye.
Head
Bye.
back onto London. I got a
Bye.
fiance. I gotta go back to London and see her.
I have Wilhelmina Murray waiting for me at home.
Yeah, I'm not interested in meeting the devil tonight.
Yeah, no thank you.
No, I understand.
I feel like as women we have those instincts, but there are some people who do not have those instincts.
And again, it goes back to the traditions and tropes of the horror genre.
Yes.
In order for the genre to exist, people
I
have
think
to...
we should split up. No, let's not.
In order for the genre to exist, people have to behave in a way that is not necessarily logical. In a horror movie, in Scooby-Doo, they all split up, even though
Never
they
do that.
know they might get in trouble that way. In a horror movie, whenever you are escaping from the bad guy and you hit him with your car, instead of just driving over him another time and going to the police station, you stop the car and get out to see if he's really dead.
No.
That's not...
Back up, hit him again, and keep going.
That's not the way that people would do things in real life, but in order for the story to continue going, it has to happen that way.
The most terrifying horror stories are when people do everything right and are still killed.
Yeah.
Those are the most horrifying things.
But my point is not that. My point is, Jonathan knew better, but in order for the horror story to happen, like, if he hadn't gone to the castle, we wouldn't have a story.
Yeah, and a lot of
And that's
this
how the
too,
horror genre works. If you didn't do the stupid thing, the story wouldn't
What was
exist.
it? There was this horrible movie with Keanu Reeves.
Keanu Reeves was in Dracula.
He was in Dracula, but there was this horrible movie with Keanu Reeves that wasn't Dracula. I think it was called The Devil's Advocate.
Yeah.
Yes, and at the end, the devil is just pride. It's my favorite sin. And Jonathan Harker, a lot of the reason he is going is because he just passed his solicitor's exam. And so his boss wants him to take over the account.
His real estate license.
He just got his real estate license. His boss wants him to take this over because his boss wants Jonathan to take over for him. And so he does because he thinks it will be a great advance to his career. And so he's ignoring a lot of the creepy, don't go there, don't do that, pride, it's your favorite sin. But yeah, that movie is freaky. The Francis Ford Coppola version is freaky with Keanu Reeves, but Winona Ryder makes an excellent meme. And Gary Oldman was hot.
Winona was hot.
They were both hot.
Gary Oldman
And Anthony
to our
Hopkins
podcast.
just does excellent playing crazy.
Anthony Hopkins is excellent always.
Yeah.
Anthony Hopkins listens to our podcast.
Please do. Your voice is like melted dark chocolate.
Sir Anthony. You know he's a guitar hero.
Really? That's kind of adorable.
He loves the Rock Band games.
Aww. That's cute.
Anyway,
He goes to Castle Dracula.
goes
And he
to
meets-
Castle Dracula and meets the Count.
And we have a very distinct image of the Count, which is a dashing nobleman, black hair, slicked back,
Widow's Peak.
widow's peak. You need the widow's peak.
I don't know why.
It's even here.
You
in
gotta-
the-
he gotta
you
have the
gotta
widow's
have the
peak.
widow's peak, man. But Eddie Izzard.
Anyways, sorry, I had to get us off track a little bit there, otherwise it wouldn't feel right.
Oh, you have fingers too. It's okay. It's a T word. You just stick your thumb. Okay. Anyway, we have a distinct image of Dracula.
Dracula's very, very like iconic.
And he is supposed to be this suave young nobleman.
Now you know why the thing that's so interesting to me about Dracula's image: the widow's peak, the black hair slicked back,
Yes.
the very pale skin and the high
Stop describing
cheekbones.
me.
The pale skin and the high cheekbones. The reason Dracula looks like that is because Dracula is based on a real life historical
Vlad
individual,
Tempest.
Vlad the Impaler.
Yes, otherwise known as Vlad Tempest or Vlad the Third.
They also called him Dracula
Yes,
because he liked to impale his enemies from ass
bottom
to mouth
Yeah.
on stakes and leave them hanging outside his.
There is a
house.
record of a soldier who displeased him, and he put the soldier on a pike and then forced the soldier to watch as the soldier's mother, was raped and then torn apart by wild dogs.
Yeah, he was
He was not a nice man.
really unpleasant man.
Not a nice man.
But he was
Oh, I forgot Dracula Untold with Luke Evans. That's
Yes.
another movie one.
a pale-skinned, tall, high-cheekboned, black-haired,
Yes.
dark-eyed man. And that's why Dracula looks like he does, because Bram Stoker based him off of this existing historical nightmare person.
Yes. But the original person took Dracula, meaning of the dragon,
Mhm.
but there was translation error that Stoker found, or I'm trying to think of the word, but it escapes me.
Misnomer?
Yes, where it also means devil, of the devil. So he was like, okay, well, it's going to be
Of the devil.
of the devil. So he just used the name because he liked it, and he based the character's appearance on that. However, when Stoker meets him, he is old, wrinkly man with white hair and a very long white mustache,
Yes.
which I imagine like this Fu Manchu thing, just kind of hanging down to his waist.
A Fu Manchu, huh?
You know, where it's just kind of like, it's like a handlebar mustache, except it doesn't go out, it just comes all the way down to his waist, and he's got like beads and shit in it. I'm like, well, that's
Now-
not exactly terrifying. It's
Now,
weird.
The interesting thing about vampires.
Mustaches are weird.
The interesting thing about vampires is they've been recorded as being part of most cultures in their folklore.
Greeks believed redheads were vampires.
It wasn't just Greeks. So did Romanis.
That is the interesting thing. Every culture across the world has their own version of a vampire.
Chupacabras are technically vampires.
Yeah.
Um,
There is a specific Filipino creature.
have you read the John Polidori story?
No.
Polidori? It's called The Vampire. It's the first vampire story. It was 1819, I think. And it was what really inspired Bram Stoker. It's a short story. It's not long at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, Polidori's vampires, pale skin, fangs, drank the blood of the innocents, blah, blah, blah. And his vampires, I believe, if I remember correctly, were redheaded. Actually, like, back in the day, like, way back, in the time when when Bram Stoker wrote this novel, you could, like, I mean, that was still when, like, witch hunts and things like that happened. Like, people,
You
it
could
was
still accuse somebody of being a
not,
vampire.
it was not uncommon for people who were redheaded to be murdered.
It was the 1910s when Mary Brown in Virginia was staked and beheaded after she died of tuberculosis and was considered the first American vampire.
Yeah, there were different signs, but they always said that since, in order to become a vampire, you had to make a deal with the devil. And
or be bitten by a vampire.
Or be bitten by a vampire. But
Exchange blood.
if you became a vampire through a deal with the devil, there would be a mark. And the mark could be it could be a birthmark, so if you're an unfortunate birthmark. But a lot of times they were like, if you have red hair, it's not a normal color. It's not common.
Yeah, that's the mark of the vampire.
It's the mark of a vampire. You made a deal with the devil. You're a vampire. You're a witch. And they killed people because they were like, hey, you're probably a vampire or a witch.
And now you wonder why 2% of the population has red hair.
We're a dying breed. But Dracula is not a redhead.
No.
He does have
He's dark hair.
He does have a redheaded wife.
His fair-haired wife.
A blonde wife and a redheaded wife. He has both. There's 3 of them, aren't there?
There's 3 of them, but the hair there is one that is dark hair. There is one that is blonde hair. Because I was looking for it this time when I went
could
through
have
it.
sworn. Maybe it's just the movie.
The Van Helsing movie has them as a blonde, redhead, and brunette, and
so do a lot of the Dracula
A lot of
movies.
them have them as a blonde, redhead, and brunette because what man would not want one of each?
Wow.
We're getting there.
But we're totally off track of the chronology of the story.
Totally.
So this old
We've gotten to
man
Jonathan Harker getting to the castle.
and being greeted by an old man with mustache,
Old man with a mustache.
who is
And
the count.
He tells him, please sup. I've already eaten. Please eat without me. You must refresh. And Jonathan is like, okay, this place is weird, but I'm not really going to do it. I'm going to chalk it up to being tired. I'm going to go bed.
The super weird thing about this book is in this day and age, you cannot go into this book without already knowing what's going on.
No, you can't.
Like,
You
can't go into this book and be surprised by what's happening in it. Like, everyone is effectively spoiled for this book from the beginning because it is such a behemoth of pop culture.
It's so iconic.
But, like, if you think about it from the context of someone reading it in Bram Stoker's time,
who has no idea? You're
like, they don't know that Count Dracula is a vampire.
No.
Whenever
they
Jonathan,
don't.
like, we're reading it,
So
and
the first
the man
clue
who,
is, I will not eat with you.
but that's even a little thing. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, for us, for modern readers, you read that the Count introduces himself as Count Dracula, and you're like, he's a vampire, because, like, I mean, even nowadays, like, people use Draculas as a way to describe vampires. Like, that's the name is so embedded in culture as a vampire.
It's become synonymous with vampire.
Yeah, and so, like, it's interesting to me to think about that if you were reading this book in 1897, you'd be like, wow, his host is really weird. And it would take you a few chapters to finally realize he's a fucking vampire.
Yeah.
Which is hilarious.
It would
because
take you till about halfway through the book.
Yeah, it's like, like, it doesn't even occur to you whenever, as a modern reader, to not be suspicious of him.
And even then, some of the symptoms of vampirism in the book are not common zeitgeist anymore. They're just not. I mean, and then it also kind of depends on what universe you subscribe to. I mean, there are some universes where it's like if you're bitten by a vampire, you immediately become a vampire. Or there's
That's
some
the
where
most
it's like,
common nowadays.
if you're bitten by a vampire, you become a vampire after you die. Or
if you're
like
bitten by a vampire,
one,
you become a vampire's thrall.
Yeah, and with this one, if you are bitten by a vampire and exchange blood with a vampire,
Like, you have to
then
drink
you
the
become a
vampire's
vampire.
blood, too.
Yeah. And even
Which,
then, it's
you
not
know,
an immediate process.
It's interesting because I think the most common nowadays, most commonly, it's like if you're bitten by a vampire,
You turn into
you turn into a vampire.
like werewolves.
Or zombies.
Yeah.
And which both of those, werewolves I think are the only ones that have always been that way.
Yeah. Because werewolves were created by the movie industry.
Right. But yeah, vampires, it used to be like they had to drink your blood and then they would make you drink their blood.
Yeah.
To turn you. If they just drank your blood, they would just drink you and drain you until you were dead, and then you're dead. But most modern vampires, it's like if you get bit by a vampire, you're a vampire. The only exception I can think of is TV show Supernatural, which explicitly requires the vampires, in order to change somebody, they have to also feed them their blood.
Yeah, but Supernatural is the only one where they need dead man's blood to be killed and not a stake.
Well, no, dead man's blood doesn't kill them, it just slows them down.
Yeah.
You behead them to kill them in Supernatural.
Yes.
In this, in Dracula, you have to stake in the heart with a wooden stake and behead them.
Yes.
You have to do both.
Lots of nastiness. And you also have to put garlic in the mouth.
Right.
It's
just interesting to see how in the course of several hundred years, how the mythology has changed and simplified.
Yes, Jonathan Harker on his way to the castle gets a plethora of things. He gets wild garlic flowers. He gets wood from a wild rose, which is something that has fallen out of common zeitgeist as well, is the wild roses. He gets a crucifix from a little old lady. And he's like, I felt bad refusing her, but everyone was very adamant. No, take these. Take these.
If you have to go up there,
take these for your mother's sake. So he goes up there and he's like, okay, yeah, I know. And the only thing he notices that's kind of weird is Dracula doesn't eat with him, and then he goes into this library and finds that it's like, oh my gosh, there is a shit ton of stuff in here about England. Like a shit ton. About culture and etiquette and maps and everything like that.
Which he doesn't think a lot of because his client is wanting to move to England after all.
His client is wanting to move to England, and Dracula has a speech about he doesn't want people to know he is a foreigner. He's like, I want
to blend in.
He wants to blend in. He's like, but if someone hears me speak, they know I am a foreigner by the tilt of my voice or something like that.
Basically, he means his accent.
And so he
I want to suck your blood.
Yeah, it's a little subtle. He wants to sound like John Harker. And if anyone has seen the Francis Ford Coppola movie, that whole underlying love triangle thing never happened in the book. Just so you know.
You mean between Mina
and Dracula, about Mina being the resurrected love of him and all that. That never happened.
But there's an element, like, she's under his thrall. There's definitely an element of, like, a sexual or romantic
But it is
obsession.
said in the book that the only reason he tries to turn Mina is because it is revenge of the barbarian, because that was what they did when they took over countries. They would take the women. And so he's like, this is my revenge for you, is to take your woman. Which, we're going to get into sexism things a little bit later.
Shocking that a book from 1987 would be sexist.
That is the one, I love this book, but that is the one thing that bugs the shit out of me. And it's the worst from Van Helsing. But we will get
Van
to
Helsing's a pig.
He is. He's a redhead. So, we will get there. We're still at Castle Dracula. Oh, Lord.
The thing about this book is I don't know that we necessarily need to break it down chronologically.
No,
Everyone knows how it
Everyone
goes.
knows how this book's work. Basically what happens is a scene that has, like, basically stuck with me for a very, very, very long time is, like, the whole Jonathan cuts himself with the razor because Dracula didn't show up in a mirror. Well, why is that? That is because silver was considered to be a pure metal, and most mirrors back in the day were lined with silver before modern aluminum mirrors came into being. So if a vampire could not see themselves in the Victorian age, they'd be fine in aluminum and on film and
But I
stuff
mean,
like
that's
that.
never been the case.
No.
Like, I mean, the principle behind it was because of the silver, but it stuck as just
And then
a
there's
vampire
the whole idea
mythology.
that they wouldn't show up on film because film is supposed to capture a piece of your soul, and vampires have no soul, so there's nothing to capture.
Which also, fun fact, is where the whole redheads have no souls thing came from.
Mm-hmm.
Because vampires have no souls, and if you're redheaded, you're probably a vampire, ergo, you have no soul.
Are you a vampire? Would you tell me?
Would I tell you?
Would you tell me?
Did you ask specifically?
Are you a vampire? What's in the portada?
Don't worry about it.
Just don't make me eat worms.
So, needless to say, Jonathan is a damn fine real estate agent.
Yes.
And
Sells
he gets
him
his
Carfax Abbey.
gets his client a full-on abbey. A full-on... What is the word?
Ruined monastery.
Yeah, a monastery.
Which is interesting.
It's interesting because...
Vampires not supposed to be able to rest in full ground.
Well, here's the thing. It's like, that's another interesting thing that's changed over the years. It's like, vampires still don't do all crucifixes.
No.
But, like, the whole, like, specific element of, like, eternal damnation, like, servants of Satan thing, has been downplayed somewhat over the years.
Yes.
Dracula was very explicitly
Yes.
servant of Satan, damned for eternity.
Well, a lot of this is the idea of Western Europe coming and ridding modern Europe of their sins and basically destroying Eastern Europe, which Eastern Europeans saw as modern and civilized as compared to the barbarians of the West.
The thing that
blah 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 politics.
Well, no, it's interesting because there's a constant. I read an article once that was talking about the most popular monsters in media in a time period can tell you what people are afraid of.
We're afraid of zombies the most now.
So
especially
zombies
with
are all about mindless consumerism, about capitalism, and about
having no control.
Basically it's about the masses turning on the wealthy or the well-off or the successful, because basically it's like the whole. So like the whole, whenever zombies are the big thing, you know that there's class unrest between the classes because the zombies basically represent mob justice and the concept of mobs taking over. Vampires almost always are foreigners. Vampires are always coming from somewhere else, and they're coming to, like, specifically in the case of Dracula.
They are, because we just had, like, that whole thing about Twilight and True Blood and all that.
So whenever you see vampires, a lot of times it is a fear of change, specifically a fear of people who are different coming into your space, or, like, to get more specific about it, just about immigrants and, like, distrusting foreigners. So, like, this whole article, like, basically was predicated on the idea that you can tell where the social unrest in a society is based on the kind of story, the horror stories that they're interested in, because that's what they're afraid of on a psychological level. So, for Dracula to be written in 1897 about someone coming from Eastern Europe to London, which was considered to be the cultural hub of the world at that point, like, it's clearly playing off of the fears of Western Europeans and how they think they are better than or more civilized than the Eastern Europeans, or even worse, the, Asians, like, who are starting to immigrate to their countries. And so really, at its heart, Dracula is a story about people who are afraid of how things are going to change when immigrants become part of their society.
Yeah. And they're going to kill their society and modern civilization with their... Because they're going to bring their superstitious beliefs with them.
Right.
And they literally brought the monsters with them this time.
And yeah, and it's definitely interesting how the way to defeat Dracula, or the way to defeat the interloper, the immigrant here, is through intense Western religion.
Yes, intense Western religion.
It kind of comes back to that whole fear of, it's kind of like how Islamophobia is like people treat people who are Muslim differently because they're like, I'm afraid of you because your belief system, your religious belief system doesn't match up to mine.
The afterword in the version of this book that I have, of Dracula, talks about how they tried to defeat Dracula with science and technology to save Lucy, and that's all they use is science and technology, and it fails them.
Right.
And that also goes back to the telegram that Van Helsing sent to Jon Stewart and said, it's like, you need to stay with Lucy tonight, and never arrived. And so it says that it's like, well, this science and technology, as wonderful it is not always reliable, and the thing that really defeats Dracula is turning his instruments of the Western European religion against him, like hypnosis. The hypnosis of Mina Harker is what leads them to the boys to the location
I
of
forgot that
Dracula.
they hypnotized Mina.
Yes, they hypnotized
That's very
Mina
like
at sunrise and
Eastern
sunset.
mysticism.
Yeah, very Eastern mysticism, and then they use the superstitions that they have from that religion to work against him. And so it is really a combination of science, their modern science, and their mysticism and belief that ends up defeating Dracula. And I really do like that there is a scene in here where they're talking about defeating Dracula and Quincy Morris, the Texan, which, God bless that man. I don't know who he was based off of.
The only American in the
him.
novel.
Yeah, the one that's like, we need Winchesters, and everyone's like, okay. But
when in doubt.
Yeah,
Winchester.
he is the one that is like, I want to kill this SOB, and Jonathan Harker grabs his hand, and Mina is like, because it's told from the point of view of her diary, she's like, I don't know what that meant, and I'm like, that is your husband calling dibs, I get to kill this asshole, because he was going to leave me to his brides, he was going to take me from you, he has tried to take you from me, this is not a good thing. Yeah, and then, oh god, talking about the character of Mina Harker versus Lucy Westenra is always an interesting chat.
Super sexist.
Super sexist.
Super sexist.
Someone make a t-shirt of that, too.
So, Mina, Jonathan's wife.
Yes.
Well, she's his fiance.
Wilhelmina Murray, who becomes
Which,
Mina
thank God,
Harker.
she goes by Mina, because Wilhelmina is...
awesome.
Sorry to any Wilhelminas that might be listening to that, but it's such an old lady name.
I hope you go by Mina or Will.
Such an old lady name. So Mina is his
this is an old lady
fiance at the beginning of the book.
Yes.
When he comes back from selling the abbey to Count Dracula, he eventually marries Mina.
He marries Mina in the hospital, which I'm like, that is just kind of actually one of the cutest things ever.
So romantic.
Well, it's just kind of cute because he's like, I don't want to wait any longer to marry you, and
Well,
she's
'cause he
like, let's
almost-
do it.
He's
He's
had this like near-death experience.
Yeah, and he's like, I don't want to wait any longer. Let's just do it.
He's like, what if I die tomorrow? Kind of
Yeah.
thing.
He's like, what if I die tomorrow? Even if all of this was a terrible dream, what if I never am cured from this
Jonathan,
quote-unquote brain fever?
"'Twas not a dream.
Was not a dream.
You were
literally.
almost murdered by...
You were almost martyred by 3 merry vampiresses.
Yeah.
Is that a word?
Vampiresses?
Vampiresses?
Vampiresses.
Vampiricide?
Vampiricide.
Nemesis.
Nemiso.
Dude, you were almost screwed by 3 vampires and blood drained. Marry your girlfriend.
If you have to go.
That is not how I would choose.
Vampire orgy and then being drained of your blood?
Definitely not.
Really?
Really.
But the orgy part.
That wouldn't be bad. It's the blood being drained afterward.
You humans are so touchy about your blood. I mean... Anyway.
Is that why this tastes like O positive?
It's O negative. Come on, have some class.
Oh, come on. You could at least give me my own blood type.
Oh boy. So, he marries Mina, And Mina is Mina becomes a Victorian married woman, which is the only kind of Victorian woman that has any kind of respect.
Or rights.
And even then, they're extremely limited, but she is considered to be socially...
And because of fleeing to aid her fiancé/husband, she leaves her childhood friend / kind of sister, Lucy Westenra, alone at Whitby and in London.
And Lucy is not a married woman.
No, but she is engaged to the Honourable Sir Arthur Holmwood, son of Lord Godalming, even though she has been proposed to also by Quincy Morris, the Texan, and Dr. John Stewart, who runs the insane asylum where Renfield is. And Renfield, it is alluded to throughout the book, seems to have this kind of psychic connection to Dracula. He is enthralled.
He's one of Dracula's thralls.
Yes. And I don't know how that happened, and that is never expressed in the book.
Yeah, the backstory of that is not ever explained.
No.
However, the point here being the difference between Mina and Lucy, the main difference between the two of them is one of them is a married woman and one of them is essentially a single woman.
Yes.
She is engaged, but she's a single woman.
And that is the thing that is very interesting about Lucy is in most popular culture, Lucy is expressed as a very free young woman, and that is not true in the book. She is not. She's very young. She's 19. She's very virtuous. She's very calm, but she is also very passive.
I feel like she's almost punished for not having a husband.
Exactly. She is punished for not having a fiancé or a husband.
Mina comes out of this story.
Which the only thing Lucy did wrong was sleepwalk, and she can't help that.
Mina comes out of this story relatively intact. She's been through some shit. She almost got turned into a vampire.
She comes out of the story redeemed, married, happily married, having a little boy named Quincy Harker, which we should read the Quincy Harker Year 1 series, because I really like that series, and it's shit.
But Lucy doesn't get any of that.
No, Lucy is killed.
Lucy is turned into a vampire.
Yeah.
And then killed. It's not like Dracula kills her. It's like Dracula turns her, and then they kill her.
Into a vampire.
Her friends.
And then she dies, to quote Van Helsing, she dies true death. At the hand of Sir Arthur Holmwood, who stakes her through the heart, who loved her more. But she had 3 transfusions. She has the blood of 4 strong men in her, and it's like, Van Helsing is, I like him as character, but he is a sexist asshole. Which, yes, when Lucy starts to wane, John Stewart calls in Professor Abraham Van Helsing, which is very interesting, because Dr. Abraham Van Helsing shares a first name with the author. Bram is short for Abraham.
I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, so he obviously really felt a close connection to this character to name him after himself. As a writer, I'm speaking about that, where, Bram or Bram, or however you want to say it, is short for Abraham. So, Abraham Van Helsing he's a Dutchman. And
a mystic.
He is a bit of a mystic. He is a doctor, he is a lawyer, he is a mystic. He had gangrene sucked out of his arm by John Stewart, which is the only reason he gets involved, is because he comes to take care of Lucy in repayment of that. He also was married with a son, who are now dead in the grave, which we never get any other backstory on that. But because of this, he tells Arthur, he's like, you remind me of my son, and he kind of takes on the group as his own. Same thing with Madame Mina, as he refers to her. He really ends up caring deeply about these people, because he calls them Friend John, or Morris Quincy, or Young Arthur, or Madame Mina, or something like that.
Right.
He takes care of them. And he tried desperately to save Lucy, but because he was certain no one would understand his methods, he didn't tell anybody the reason for any of his things, and that is what led to Lucy's demise, was his secrecy. And it's like, if you had just told Mrs. Westenra not to remove any of the garlic flowers from her window, Lucy would have lived.
Yeah,
Quite
but
honestly.
he didn't want to discuss it.
No, he didn't want to discuss it with her mother because a woman's mind cannot comprehend such things. And that has always been the downfall of these characters, is
So
when Van
Lucy-
Helsing has underestimated the quote-unquote woman's mind.
Lucy dies because Van Helsing was a sexist pig.
Yes.
I never liked Van Helsing.
You never liked Van Helsing.
I never liked Van Helsing. To me, as a teen, whatever I was when I first read
He is a very strange man.
as a young woman, the first time I ever read this book, I immediately identified Van Helsing as the reason that Lucy died.
Yeah, definitely.
And I never liked him
Definitely.
because
Definitely.
because it was literally, he was like so sure that he is such a wise doctor that a woman possibly couldn't comprehend like the trappings of his mind, and so he would just handle it. And she died because of that, because he was such an arrogant prick. So I've never liked Van
And he
Helsing.
also didn't trust John Stewart to
Yeah.
understand the trappings of his mind.
Right.
So he would not tell John what he was doing.
So really, all
he had to say was that to John Stewart and to Mrs. Westenra, it's like, these flowers are medicinal, do not remove them. That's all he had to say. And he didn't have to say that these are to prevent the vampire from coming into her room, kind of thing. It's like, just say these are medicinal, don't remove them, don't open the window, don't do anything.
right.
Which, lesson number 1, people, if your doctor will not answer any of your questions, get a new doctor.
Get a new doctor. Don't
but
have a male doctor in general. Men cannot be trusted.
I won't say that.
Men cannot be trusted.
My husband's going to be so disappointed.
Trademark Casey Aaron. September 10th, 2008.
It's Halloween. It's not September.
Halloween 2018. Fuck you. I'm preparing. We're in
Okay.
advancing. Everyone knows we didn't record this on the day we posted it. They know. Men can't be trusted.
Give me the bottle, dear.
Doctors can't be trusted.
Give me the bottle, dear. Thank you, darling.
Furthermore,
You have cat hair on the microphone.
there's cat hair on my microphone. But that's not what I was saying furthermore about. What I was saying furthermore about is, yes, Van Helsing is a sexist pig and I hate him. But also, Bram Stoker is a sexist pig.
A little bit.
Who's like a woman's only worth within the context of a marriage. So since Lucy was a vampire and couldn't be married, her fiancé murdered her. Like,
He who has the only right.
yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, you have more decision over whether this young woman lives or dies because you're her fiancé. Like,
Okay. Did you know, though, through Oscar Wilde's parents, Stoker met his wife, Florence Belko. So he was married.
right. And I'm sure he thought that he had more rights to make choices for his wife than anybody else did, including his wife. Because it was 1897.
I will say the only times they do have setbacks in the book is when they keep women in the dark. So the only time they have setbacks is when they decide to keep Mina out of their little summits.
You know,
The only time they have... And like, at the beginning of the book, Mina is an etiquette teacher. By the end of the book, she is aiming a pistol at a gypsy's head.
Romani's head.
Well, Romani's head. I'm sorry, I did not mean to be insensitive. I know there's a difference. I apologize.
Well, just that word is not, the G word is not appropriate. Anyway,
I apologize.
can we talk about something else? Can we talk about how much camping there is in this book?
So much camping.
There's a lot of camping.
That's a lot of camping.
I feel like the camping is overlooked in, like, modern Dracula. Like,
You mean at the end with Van Helsing and Mina and, like, the bride show up and eat the horses?
Yeah. I just have a very distinct memory of them all on, like, the campsite in the nighttime and, like, the wolves and the bats coming around the campsite.
And drawing of the circle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's more camping.
That's terrifying.
Yeah.
Being
I remember-
out in the open wilderness at night, because there's wolves, there's bats,
Well, because
there's
that's the thing.
snakes.
The other thing is Dracula can turn into animals. Like,
Yes.
most modern vampires, like, oh yeah, sure, they can turn into a bat, whatever, it's fine. Dracula can turn into whatever fucking animal he wants.
Except during the day.
Well, yeah, he can't do shit during the day.
He can shift. He ceases shifting forms at sunrise and sunset. This is not a situation where vampires are like turned to ash during the daylight. It's just their powers are diminished during the day.
But like, he turns into a big black scary wolf at one point.
Yeah.
He can turn into a bat. He can turn into snakes.
He can control other wolves.
He can speak to animals. He can thrall people from miles and miles away.
Mist and silk through, and
I forgot about the mist. Yeah, it's fucked up, man. Dracula is fucked up.
Which leads to like the common media thing of like Dracula being the ultimate vampire.
Yeah, he's stronger than other vampires.
Yeah, which this is.
That's just because
that's
vampires
prominent
in general have been watered down over the centuries, you know?
Yeah. And I mean, I guess you could associate that with genetic drift, perhaps.
Sure.
You know, the next generation had to evolve to be less noticeable.
There you go. So, since we've already established we're not trying to chronologically break down this book,
No, good lord.
let's do something fun here. Compare and contrast.
Okay.
Count Vladimir Dracula and Edward Cullen.
Oh, fuck! I hate Twilight. Okay, now that I've got that out there. I will say...
Listen, I saw a tweet yesterday that changed my life.
What was it?
It said, Bella Swan wanted nothing more in life to get fucked and be immortal. Which, like...
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
That's relatable.
Okay.
That's hashtag relatable. Like, some good sex and immortality. Like, is she asking for something super unreasonable? Is she asking for something that most people would not want?
To quote Stephen King, Harry Potter is about rising up and defeating evil and injustice. Twilight is about having a boyfriend.
I'm not saying that I like the Twilight novels. I'm just saying the concept of...
Do not ask us to review Twilight.
If they pay enough on the
If you
Patreon,
pay
we will.
on the Patreon, we will cover Twilight. But unless you pay us, I'm not doing it.
My point is, vampires have undergone a lot of changes since Dracula.
A lot of that started with the Francis Ford Coppola movie, where at the
In
end,
1992.
Dracula gets the redemption.
Right. Well, because
Because
Dracula
he's
in the
seen as
original
this
novel,
tragic character.
in the original novel, there's no indication that Dracula could live without human blood.
Exactly.
And by now, we've got not only in Twilight, but also in Buffy
Yes,
and
in
Supernatural.
Supernatural.
There are a lot
Chaos
of
Blood.
different vampires that
Blood.
choose not to prey on humans.
Yeah.
They choose to eat, like, you know, steal from a blood bank or to eat animal meat.
If you ever saw that short-lived TV show Moonlight, he had
Mhm.
like a blood dealer.
Yeah. So, like, vampires have... There's a certain
They found ways
element.
around.
There's a certain element of gray to the world of black and white. Because the thing about a vampire is, like, in Dracula, in the context of Dracula, no vampire could be good because they've
No.
aligned themselves with the forces of hell, and the only way for them to survive is to kill living
Okay.
human beings.
Edward
And
Cullen.
nowadays, you've got vampires who can actively choose to essentially, quote unquote, be vegetarian.
Edward Cullen is a vegetarian vampire, which is a point in his favor. 2, Sparkles, which you never know when you'll meet a sparkly gay vampire. 3, completely manipulates and dominates Bella's time, which is a strike against him, and it's a pretty major one. 4, tries to get super controlling of her and what she does and where she goes and what happens to her and who she talks to, especially when Jacob is involved. 5, tries to make decisions for her without her consent. It's a pretty abusive relationship, if you ask me, personally.
Sure,
Emotionally.
I'm not talking about the relationship. I'm just talking about compare and contrast vampires.
Compare and contrast vampires.
Like
he runs
Edward
really
Cullen-
fast.
Edward Cullen is, for all intents and purposes, He can't turn into animals.
No.
He can't
He
hypnotize.
can't turn into mist.
He can't hypnotize
He can't
people.
hypnotize. He can
Or
just
thrall
run really
people.
fast.
He can run very fast.
He's super strong and he's sparkly.
He sparkles in the
He
summer.
sounds like a...
He doesn't, his powers don't appear to be dampened by the daytime.
They don't sleep.
He doesn't
In
have,
that verse.
he doesn't lack strength or speed whenever
No.
whenever he's awake
No
in the
pointy
daytime.
teeth, though.
No pointy teeth in general, but he can, I'm just talking from a purely pragmatic point of view. Dracula
I
versus
think Dracula
Cullen.
would kick Edward Cullen's ass.
You think?
Because he can just turn into a giant wolf and rip his throat out and be done.
If it's at nighttime.
If it's at nighttime, during the day, I mean, hundreds of thousands of years of warring and knowing battle strategy would kick Edward Cullen's
But does
115
Dracula
bald
still
ass.
have his super strength during the day? He can't turn into a wolf or fog during the day.
No, but he does have his super strength, because remember Jonathan Harker tried to shovel his face?
Oh, right.
And, his head, all it did was glance off him, his head turned, and he still had the red mark upon his face.
I don't know. I
And the
think that they'd
shovel.
be pretty if they were to
They'd
fight
be
during the
pretty
day,
even
they'd be pretty.
matched during the
Also,
day.
you're forgetting
But
a critical.
Dracula is not dumb enough to go up against Edward Cullen during the day. He'd
Also,
wait
you're
until
forgetting
night
a
and beat the shit out
critical
of him.
skill that Edward Cullen has that Dracula does not.
Brooding?
Mind reading.
That would suck.
Edward Cullen can read minds, and as far as we know, Dracula cannot do that.
That's true, as far as we know.
Which means that
However,
Edward Cullen would be
Dracula-
able to anticipate Dracula's moves.
Dracula would be able to thrall humans to do his bidding for him, and Edward Cullen, drawn by some sense of duty, would not be able to hurt them, so they would let them
He'd just
kill
ask his vampire family to help him.
them. Okay, so if we're now branching out into
If
the
Dracula's
thralls
allowed
and
to bring
everybody else,
thralls in, then I think
Edward
Edward's
Cullen's
allowed to
allowed-
bring in Carlisle
Okay,
and Alice.
That's the interesting thing about Twilight that I hate, is because Edward and Bella are, to me, not all that interesting. I want to read about Jasper and Alice. I want to
Jasper-
read about
I don't wanna
Rosalie
read-
and Emmett.
Can we sidebar for a second? I don't want to read a goddamn thing about Jasper.
You don't?
Jasper's a fucking Confederate soldier.
Okay, that's true. I'll give you that.
Jasper
I
was
just
a
want to
fucking
read about
Confederate
Alice.
soldier.
Give me a whole novel about Alice.
Or Carlisle.
Carlisle would be interesting.
Or Rosalie murdering a
Rosalie,
rapist.
yes. Amen, sister. That's the thing about Twilight, is the two main characters are surrounded by all these interesting people, and we are left with the least interesting people in the group.
You know what the funniest thing about vampires is? So Dracula's got an inherent sexuality to him, sure.
Oh yeah, definitely.
It's definitely
Well,
there in the
biting
original.
a woman's neck was considered a sexual act back then. Even in the original Bela Lugosi movie,
You
they
say
couldn't
back then
show
like it's not considered a sexual
oh
act
yeah,
now.
no one can resist neck kisses. But even back then when they did the Bela Lugosi movie, they couldn't show him biting a woman's neck because it was considered too sexual.
Ooh la la.
Ooh.
Well, so Dracula's always had a certain sexuality to it. To the vampire concept has always had that. Carmilla, like I mentioned
Always.
earlier,
Yes.
there was kind of a tryst
Nosferatu.
happening between the two, the vampire and the young woman that she was pursuing. But
Elizabeth Bathory.
you
Bathing
know
in the blood of
the
virgins.
funniest thing, the first time that somebody explicitly made vampires sexy.
Spike.
No. Goddamn Anne Rice, that bitch.
And fucking Rice!
That
Hella gay vampires! I remember...
She won't call them gay. She's Anne Rice is the worst.
Talk about no fanfiction.
Anne Rice is the worst.
Fanfiction is a radical feminist choice. I will die on this ship.
Anyway, I remember watching the Tom Cruise
Interview with a Vampire
Interview
and
with a
Brad Pitt with
Oh,
Antonio
God.
Banderas.
I was
And Kirsten Dunst.
way too young to have. I had
Same.
no
I was
business.
way too
I
young.
had no business watching
Way
that
too
movie.
young, but I'm like, she's neat. I mean, oh my god, the shot of Brad Pitt walking out of that plantation house holding the dead body of this beautiful black woman. I'm like, oh my god, I don't know what just happened to me, but something happened.
So, vampires have always been inherently sexual in nature. Anne Rice was one of the first authors to really embrace that.
Yes.
And then we saw things like True Blood and Twilight,
Yes.
where it's like the sexy vampires are also romantic vampires, and it's getting more and
They're
more.
the tragic romantic hero.
Right. So it's like so I talked about earlier. You know, vampires were like, oh, this fear of like the unknown, this fear of immigrants and change, and obviously in these contexts.
Now they're the dark brooding bad boy.
Yeah. Now it's a
That
sexy.
can be fixed.
Now it's a sexy thing.
Oh my God, Vampire Diaries, Damon.
Which one was that?
Ian
Somerhalder?
Yes, with the blue eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Come to the dark side. We have rough sex and bourbon. I'm there.
You okay?
I'm good. What did you put in my wine?
Blood.
Damn it.
My blood.
Allie, I'm coming to join you. I'm sorry.
You're a vampire now.
God. Sorry, Paul. Oh, and that is something too that I'm like, oh, this was not ever mentioned, but Jonathan Harker is like, if Mina has to go into that dark night, she's not going alone. I'm like, way to be the tragic hero.
So he's like, if we have to kill Mina because she's turning into a vampire, I'm going to kill myself too.
Yeah, or if he's like, if Mina has to become a vampire, I'm going to become a vampire as well.
Well, I mean, like, consciously, he has to know that Van Helsing will kill both of them. He has to know that. And he's just kind of resigned to it.
Yeah.
But, lucky for Jonathan, they do manage to catch...
Jonathan stabs him in the heart, and... No, Jonathan is the one that cuts off Dracula's head.
Yeah.
And Quincy is the one that stabs him in the heart.
Quincy stabs him in the heart. It's a team effort.
It is.
They catch
It's a
up
team
to...
effort.
They catch up to the cart,
Yes.
which
And
is
the
carrying...
hired hands.
Dracula is essentially escaping back to Transylvania.
Yes, because he has one earth box left, because that is the, vampires have to rest in the earth of their homeland.
So the soil from Transylvania.
Yes.
He is in it, headed home,
Mm-hmm.
because London didn't work out for him because there's way too many vampire hunters in London.
Because
Apparently,
they looked into his history as a person, and they're like, okay, well, when he was defeated badly, he went home, regrouped, and came back and struck harder.
so they follow him home, catch the cart that is taking his coffin back, pull it open. Quincy stabs him,
Yes.
and Jonathan
Harker
decapitates
cuts off
him.
his head.
And
So
just
they
before
both
the sun,
had
just
this.
before the sun sets.
I believe it says in the book it's like Dracula's eyes open because the sun has just set, but Jonathan is already on top of him.
Yes.
And as that happens, the mark leaves Mina's head, which I think it's interesting that it's like in like all of the media and the zeitgeist, the typical things where it's like the vampires recoil from like the silver crucifix to cross. In the book, that is represented by the sacred blessed wafer from the communion. So the body of Christ is, yeah, I know.
Let's not get into.
But the sacred wafer, I suppose, is used more in the Dracula novel than a crucifix is.
Yeah.
Which I've read a lot of vampire novels where it's like it doesn't necessarily have to be a crucifix; it just has to be a symbol of faith because symbols have power.
Well, holy water works on vampires in some
Holy water,
contexts too.
yes. Holy water works on vampires. So anything that carries your faith as a symbol, like a sheriff, their star on their badge would be their symbol of faith. Even if they don't believe in a god. Like in Judaism, the Star of David would be the symbol that they would use to ward off a vampire, something
Right.
like that.
It's interesting.
It is. It's very interesting.
So, Dracula as a story, I do not think is a bad novel.
No,
I
don't
like
think
it.
it's a bad novel at all.
I like it,
The
but
language can kind of be difficult to overcome. And
to
sort of in the
me,
way it's
Dracula has become more valuable as a cultural stepstone than
Oh,
as
yeah.
a novel itself.
written. Definitely.
I'm more
cultural
interested
stuff.
in what it has wrought than what it is on its own.
Exactly.
So if I
What's
were
your favorite version of Dracula? Before we do follow ratings, I just want to know.
my favorite version of Dracula,
I have two and they're terrible.
I really like the Francis Ford Coppola movie,
Mhm.
and I really like the 1970 Christopher Lee movie. Those are both favorites of mine.
You don't like them in anything else?
Well, I also like other vampire stories.
Okay.
I watched the modern retelling of Carmilla, the YouTube series.
I didn't know that was a YouTube series. You need to send that
So,
to me
did you
immediately.
ever see the Lizzie Bennet Diaries?
Yes.
It's the same premise, but with
Oh my
Carmilla.
God, send it to me.
So
I
basically,
need to watch it.
basically Carmilla and Laura, the girl who she eventually like changes and makes her thrall, are college roommates in this version of the story.
I am all there, Casey.
It's really fun.
Oh my God.
So that's one I really like, and then I also really like how vampires are handled in Supernatural. I really like the alpha vampire.
They're treated a little bit more like a pack.
Yeah, the lead vampire who's like the most powerful of all vampires, and like they fight him several times before they defeat him and kill him in Sam Winchester eventually.
Yeah, Sam Winchester.
No, but I really like how vampires are handled in Supernatural. I loved. I watched Buffy the Vampire Slayer growing up.
You know, I did a show where I was Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Oh yeah, like
That
a
was
readers
part of
theater.
it. Yeah, I did that for.
There's a group in Springfield that does a readers theater every month. That's an episode of Buffy, and then they do an episode of Star Trek. It's really fun.
Why have they not hired me?
Because it's in Springfield.
I see.
But yeah, I really like how Buffy and Supernatural handle vampires as well. But my favorite vampire movie is probably the one where Gary Oldman is the vampire.
Yes, I love Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula, even though it is nowhere near close to the book.
But it's good, though.
You cannot beat that iconic scene of Mina in the red dress and Dracula dancing around that dark room with nothing but candles. You can't beat that. That is the epitome of gothic romance. It's
very evocative.
It's so wonderful. And he talks about the little green fairy at the bottom of the absinthe bottle. I love that.
We should read some Victorian literature and drink absinthe sometime.
Do you have absinthe?
I don't right now, but I could get some.
Okay, deal. Never let it touch your gun or else it will knock you on your ass. That brings me to one of my favorite iterations of Dracula is the Steven Sommers Van Helsing movie. I know. It's a terrible movie, but I love it so much. That movie was my childhood.
What was that, 2003?
I don't know.
No, it was earlier than that.
But it had Kate Beckinsale and Hugh Jackman and David
it had Hugh
Wilhelm
Jackman.
and Richard Roxburgh. Richard Roxburgh is canonically, like, he is naturally a redhead.
2004, I was close.
Yeah, he's naturally a redhead, and they put a black wig on him.
Don't talk to me.
Okay. But another one of my
He was Dracula, yeah.
He was. And another one of my favorite versions of Dracula that I did
Doesn't that have the fucking Frankenstein monster in it, too?
This does.
God.
It's awful.
God.
It's awful. I know it's awful, Casey, but I love it. But...
It really is bad.
Okay.
I love Hugh Jackman, but it's really bad.
You know how you talked about how you were the prominent national treasure writer for fanfiction?
Did I talk about that on a podcast?
You did.
God damn it.
I was the prominent fanfiction writer
For Van Helsing.
Nobody look my shit up. Because I don't write it anymore. But the other one that I really, really liked, because the movie was terrible, and I just loved it, was Blade Trinity.
Ah! You know, I love the original...
I love B-class action movies, Casey.
The original Blade movie was a goddamn delight.
And I loved Drake in the Buffy arc that they did.
Yeah. Oh, okay, so you watched Buffy.
Yeah, totally watched Buffy. I love Buffy.
Question.
Shoot.
Angel or Spike?
Oh. So you're British, right? Yeah, I've seen every episode of Doctor Who. That's all I remember. God. Angel was kind of like the Edward Cullen vampire, brooding vampire. But
Spike was a sexy bad boy.
Spike was a sexy bad boy, and he went to go get his soul back for her. You can't top that.
Angel got his soul back too, but...
Angel got his soul back, but...
Listen, it is...
Spike consciously made the decision to go back and
Buffy
get his soul
Spike
back
is
from Buffy.
probably my most problematic ship.
Yeah, it's a hard ship.
There's
It's
some
a hard
nasty shit that goes down with that.
There's some nasty shit with that ship.
But James Marsters could get it. This is really off
All
topic.
I'm
really...
thinking about, for some reason, is the episode where Buffy's turned invisible and she is having sex on the floor, and then, like, they come in and they're like, what are you doing? It's like, naked push-ups. Buffy's turned invisible, help me find her, even though they're having sex while Buffy's invisible. I'm like, that's all I'm thinking of, that's fine.
I was way too young to watch Buffy the first time I watched that show.
Same.
I got in so much trouble.
My TV show, Mallory and I got in trouble for the same TV show, and it was Charmed. We were not allowed to watch Charmed.
These are all shows that would not have existed without Dracula.
No.
I'm trying to pull
True
us...
Blood,
Do you see me trying to pull
yes,
back on
trying
track
to pull
here?
us back.
I'm trying.
True Blood would not have existed without Dracula. Half of the young adult section at bookstores would not have existed without Dracula. Half of the... Okay, I go to Half Price Books and there is a supernatural erotica section. Half of those... That section would not exist
Everybody
without
wants to
Dracula.
fuck a monster.
Everybody wants to fuck a vampire or a werewolf.
Big monster.
Yeah, because big monster equals big stuff.
How many bottles would you give Dracula with?
3.
Let's focus.
3. Let's go with 3.
I'm gonna go with 3 too. It's a
three.
perfectly adequate number of bottles.
Adequate number of bottles.
It's an adequate number of bottles.
Adequate
Most
three.
men don't have more than 3 bottles, so. Okay, so Dracula. Dracula, I think it's easy to say. Without Dracula, we wouldn't have a huge part of the gothic horror genre that we have today. But that said, that like I said before, the novel itself is not what interests me. The context
What
of the
comes
novel
from it is more interesting.
is more interesting to me, which is why I'd only give it 3 bottles.
I agree.
I don't dislike it at all. I've read it probably
and the fact
6 or 7
every
times.
culture around the world has a vampire mythology.
Yes.
Every one of them.
And I've read the novel probably 6 or 7 times. With that said,
Same. You know I've got those stairs in my basement.
I wouldn't pick it off the shelf to read over a lot of other things. So.
You know I've got those stairs in my basement. My 13 favorite books, Dracula's one. So Dracula
would not make it into my top 13.
It would make it into mine. Just because of everything that came from it.
That's fair. Like, I mean,
We need to read Sunshine sometime. You
Sunshine.
probably won't like it, but it's another vampire thing, but it's like if vampire happened in fairy tale lore.
You know, I don't dislike vampires, but I can't think of a vampire novel that I've read that would be in like my top 10 favorite books. In general, vampires are not my...
Well, on that disappointing note.
I mean, I like Dracula, but like, to me it's more interesting historically than it is literarily. Literally? No, that's not right.
Literally?
Literaturally.
Is that even the word? On that note, cheers, good night.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. For more information, visit us at litliteraturePodcast.com or on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. And remember, too much work and no vacation deserves at least a small libation. Cheers!